I think this glider is fantastic. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's so easy to fly, lightweight, really easy launch, forward or reverse in all different conditions. It's definitely easier to launch than quite a few high B gliders. It's got such amazing performance. It's so easy to fly. It climbs and handles so nicely. It's brilliant. I really love it. I've been really enjoying flying it this week. I didn't want to get off it actually. I've chosen to carry on flying it. When you're flying in a place like Colombia, where it's pretty punchy at times and it's really strong and rough, I've been really glad that I'm flying on the TENOR Light, feeling very happy and comfortable. And then when I needed performance and I'm thinking, oh, I've got a long glide to the next place, or it's really light and scratchy, I haven't then thought, oh no, I'm on this, like, you know, poor performing glider. I felt really happy with the performance. It feels like the performance is as good as, to be honest, to me, it feels like the performance is as good as any of the high Bs, which is pretty impressive, but with less pilot demand. And that low aspect ratio really means you can crank the glider around. There's been some really punchy little calls sometimes, and I've been able to go whee, put the glider around and just core up in it. And because the handling's so light, it's effortless as well. It's just, I haven't been getting tired at all. So it's really fun, really enjoyable, absolutely loving it. Pilots are looking for a glider that has really great performance, but they don't want the pilot demands of a high B glider. Then the TENOR and the TENOR Light are a great option to look for. And with the TENOR Light, you have a lovely lightweight package, which is great for carrying up the hill and brilliant for hike and fly adventures. It's quite dynamic. The handling, it's like a little sports car. You're just zipping about the sky, having really good fun, just going whee over there, and you go through some bumps and you think boom, 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 boom. It's like you just bounce over the bumps in your little sports car. Fantastic, great fun, really sporty little glider that's fantastic for cross-country flying, great for hike and fly, soaring on the hill, playing around on the dunes, for everything. It's a very all-round fantastic glider. For a mid-B glider, it gives a really nice amount of feedback. It doesn't give as much feedback as some of the high B gliders, but that's more reassuring, less demanding, and you haven't got so much overloading your senses. But at the same time, it does talk to you. It's not all dampened, like some of the low B gliders tend to be quite dampened, which is very reassuring for pilots who want that. But the TENOR is definitely a little bit more lively. It's got a little bit more spice to it. Yeah, it's got more energy as well. So for thermaling, if you hit a core and go into it, you can immediately bank up and core round in the thermal, which is great. Where some of the gliders, they're a bit more dampened, you have to wait for the glider to come forward again, and then you can crank it round. And then when you're in mincy, very light, mincy kind of stuff, you're mincing about, then you just slow the glider down a bit, and then you just turn more with weight shift, and then it's very efficient, still turning nice and efficient. So I didn't feel like I was dropping out of the sky when there was very mincy stuff around. I wasn't losing out. So it's very good like that. So it climbs really well in the light stuff and really well in the strong stuff too. I really like these risers because they're very stable. Instead of pulleys, you have little ceramic rings for the speed system. They seem to work very nicely. Here, there's a connection system so that when you're accelerating, it accelerates the A's and the B's differently to be more efficient for more performance. TENOR Light comes with two different types of risers. You can have the standard risers with mayons or the lightweight risers with soft links. If I just pull this down, you'll see there soft links which are looped and attached on, and they have these nice sheathing, this nice bit of sheathing here which covers them up. It's actually very nicely and neatly done. I must confess I generally prefer Mayons to the soft links. Maybe it's just because I'm old and old-fashioned. The one thing that I found missing on these risers is that they don't have split A's on the soft. With the soft link version, it doesn't come with split A's. I fed that back to Hannes at Phi, and they're considering making a lightweight. He said that they're considering making a lightweight riser with the split A's as well.
So how did you find using the big ears without having the split A?
What it means is that you have to reach quite high. You have to sit forward in your seat and reach quite high, especially as the risers, they're relatively long risers. So for me, with my long monkey arms, I have no problem. I can sit forward and reach up and get the A and pull in the big ears. But definitely it's a little more fiddly like that. I personally would prefer to have split A's, but of course this is all about lightweight minimalism. A nice thing about the Ultralight, because there's only 2 A's, you actually pull quite good sized big ears. They're pretty big ears just with a one line. So that's quite good. So they're very effective. They flap around a little bit, but not too much, and they're very effective and stable. One of the reasons that the Tenor and the Ultralight are supposed to have such good performance is that there are very few lines, so only 2 A's. They have 2 B's, this is the Stabilo, and 2 C's. So very few lines. The brakes are attached just with a little bit of Velcro, which is, I guess, the most lightweight option. I personally found they kept coming off. It was very easy to knock them off. So I'd prefer something else. I personally prefer magnets, but I guess for lightweight, they might have a little clip or something like that. They're quite slimline brakes, and they don't have a lot of big stiffening in them. They just have this little rod in here. During flight, I kept wondering if they might come out, but they didn't yet. They haven't actually come out yet, and you can push them in. If they did, they're easy to replace. So, but actually I found them really fine to fly with. Part of the reason is that I found the handling of the Ultralight, the brakes are very light, so you don't need a really soft padded brake handle for it. So on this trip, I think I've done almost about 30 hours on the Ultralight, so I've got to know it really well. The conditions have been very varied. Colombia's great for that. Everything from light scratchy stuff to some pretty punchy, snotty stuff where you think the air's got out of the wrong side of bed or something. You've been slapped about the skies pretty much, and the Tenor's been really well behaved. The Ultralight is a mid-B glider like the Tenor, and but I find it, for that class, it's surprisingly agile and responsive, and it gives very good feedback for that class of glider. In fact, some pilots say if they're moving up from a low B, like an Ion or a Tequila 5, might find that the glider is more responsive and talks to them more, and definitely more agile. When you fly the Ultralight, it's kind of, ooh, it's a bit surprising. It's really quite light. When I was flying even for 5 hours, I wasn't getting tired hands or wrists at all. And I've been flying with lots of pilots on high B gliders. It seems to be climbing pretty much as well as them as well. The really surprising thing about the Ultralight is that it's pretty quick, because it is very agile. If you just use too much inside brake, you can make the glider go a little bit nose down. So it's important to use a little bit of outside brake just to keep it nice and flat. And then it climbs really well. Particularly I found it's really good in the little calls. I find myself using third to half bar on almost every glide, just because it's so efficient and felt really solid and good. And then on glides into wind or through sync, then full bar, and it's still gliding really well. On full bar, the glider does start to get a little bit light and twitchy, so you need to be on it a little bit. It's not just a solid block. I actually found the Ultralight seems like it's a little bit more twitchy than the standard Tenor, maybe because of the lighter construction. When I asked Hannes about it. He mentioned that it's also maybe slightly to do with the fact that I've got the lightweight risers that don't have split A's. So because of that, the tips are accelerated a little bit more. And he says it's very subtle, but it might make a slight difference to that. So that was interesting. For lightweight gliders, they've lightened the construction. They're not quite as stiffened and rigid as the standard gliders, so we'll tend to find they're a little bit more tip-tucky. But the behaviour, if you do have a collapse or something like that, which in some of the Colombian air I did because it's pretty turbulent, the glider is just impeccably behaved. It's kind of tuck and pop out before you know it, without a big aggressive turn or anything like that. Just sort of tuck and pop and you carry on. This is the medium 21. I think if I'm right, the weight is 3.3 kilos, which is lovely to carry. It's very compact also because the construction is very light. The rods are really light, they're very bendy. It's not really critical. It's not a problem if you scrunch it up. You can really cope with that and then it pops back out. It's not like some of the gliders that have really stiff rods. And if you look here, you don't have the rods crossing over each other, so there's no problem with it sort of bending up. When you have the shark nose, more defined shark nose, then you kind of want to avoid bending it. So this is really forgiving and easy, and you can pack it in really compactly. So it makes a brilliant little package. We really noticed, Nancy and I were swapping packs, and even with the same weight harness, we'd really noticed the difference in weight and the pack size between the two. So it's lovely. So having this level of performance in a mid-B glider pilot demand with nippy handling, the sports car feeling, it's just brilliant. Even in really light and a bit crosswind, I was able to just fluff the glider up, give it a tug, and it would just come up in the lightest breeze, inflate really nicely. It's a little slower on the tips, so the center tends to inflate first and then the tips a little bit afterwards. I actually think that's quite good because it means the glider tends to come up from the center rather than the tips coming up and clapping hands. Yeah, really easy to launch. Back in the UK, I flew in some stronger wind and still found it really easy to launch. The lightweight fabric, with all light gliders, you have a thing where the strong wind tends to blow them around and they require a little bit more management, using the rear risers and your brakes carefully and moving around the glider to stop it lifting up and blowing away. So, but in light conditions, it's a breeze. I must say I've been really impressed with how the TENOR Light has been performing amongst those gliders. Obviously different pilots fly at different levels, but I'm talking about when we're just thermaling together and especially gliding. I'd expect with a mid-B glider flying with a good performing C-class glider like the Arctic 4 that I might be being left behind a bit, but not at all. In fact, I was managing to pull away a little bit, if anything, which surprised me. Although I should have expected with the TENOR it's the same. They're amazing, their performance and their glide, and especially the speed that you have is quite surprising for the level of glider. Some of the days we had the Pacific wind coming in and we had some pretty interesting turbulence, getting really chucked and bashed about. I saw some pilots getting some very big collapses. You need to fly actively to stop collapses and to deal with them. Just keeping little inputs to keep it flying. I was really impressed with how well the glider held together. The TENOR Light is suited to a very wide spectrum of pilots. It's not really suitable or ideal as a beginner glider, even for a talented pilot. It's really a second or third glider. It's for pilots who are looking for an easy glider without too much pilot demand, but with really great XC performance, who want to do XC, hike and fly, and just normal soaring, and they want a nice light compact package. A lightweight, compact, super fun little sports car of a XC machine.
You lie to yourself at times, now you're falling apart. giving